1 year ago, we painted the first Synthwave Dante model. And now we're going to do it again. Am I out of ideas already? When Commander Sadsack finally got a new sculpt last year, I was pretty intimidated to paint it in all metallic metals. So we put up a poll and left it to you guys, and over 1,000 votes later, Synthwave was victorious. So I busted out the airbrush and we went to town. But now 12 months later, we get to compare from where we were then to where we are now. This is one of the times where a flat black prime is our best option, for two reasons. One, a zenithal highlight usually helps bring out volumes on models as a whole, but with non-metallic metal, we're going to be setting different placements for our lights and reflections. And two, you don't need an airbrush. What I'm trying to do with this is make a color shift effect, shifting from pink to blue depending on what angle you're looking at the model from. When I paint non-metallic metal, I like to do one part at a time so I can really focus on what's happening. Treating each color and layer as a finite step on the whole model for something like this can be pretty overwhelming, and that's something you just want to avoid at all costs. It's just a bad time. Building up the blues is what's going to act as our base color. We want to try and bring out the tones and the highlights on each shape. I started with Triumphant Navy, a dark desaturated blue, before jumping into Imperial Navy, which is from the vivid blue line from the Army Painter Fanatic range. Not only are we playing with contrast of light and dark, but we also want that subtle difference between saturated and desaturated tones. The next color is Royal Blue, which is a mid-tone, and it's going to be the color that we want this part of the effect to represent. But we still want a lot of darker blues and even some of the black to show through. So we're going to focus this slightly on the more raised areas. When painting anything volumetrically, I like to think of it as a topographical map. The darker colors represent the lows and the valleys, building up in layers until you get to the peaks at the top. And you can do this with any shape, you just have to know the difference between top and bottom. And probably don't paint in space. After that, we're mixing in bright Sapphire with our Royal Navy for a smooth highlight all the way up until it's just a dot of that pure bright Sapphire on the sharpest edges and points. With the blues set, it's time for the pink. This is going to be a very dominant color on Commander Devastated. Not only is it a big bright explosion of awesome, but we're going to build it up in a very different way. The blues were set to be darker and build into a single point, whereas the pinks are going to be highlighted in a very broad area. Remember, this is supposed to be color shifting, and changing the approach on how different colors are applied is going to help that. Diabolic Plum is the go-to purple here. It's actually a dark magenta, which is going to help when we start blending it into the pink. Setting placements with Diabolic Plum is a little easier to do than the blue. What I like to do is imagine a line of light and follow that across the whole model. Once that's established, we're going to move into Wicked Pink. Since this is such a big jump in color, brightness, and saturation, I'm going to apply this in thin layers. The Army Painter Fanatic Stabilizer is awesome for this. And it should be, it's going to do exactly what it was designed to do. With thin transparent layers, we're going to build a smoother gradient between the pink and the purple. When you use thinner, more transparent paints, it lets some of the previous colors show through, and as that gets stronger, it starts to blend them together before shifting into the color that we're using now. Up next, Pixie Pink. This is where the highlighting starts. Painting thin lines inside of the Wicked Pink starts to really define some of the shapes and details. It's also the color that I'm going to start tracing out some of the shapes with before mixing in Doomfire Drab, which is a very warm pink off-white. That's going to become our highest highlight. Now we have a single leg finished, we're going to repeat all those same steps for the rest of the armor. While we do that, I just want to throw a massive thank you to everybody that has supported the channel over the past year. Businesses like InGames and companies such as the Army Painter jumping on board have really helped this channel explode. And while they help the back end day-to-day stuff, it's all of you that really push it. The views, comments, and shares would have propelled Heresy for Heretics into something I couldn't have imagined it would have become. And to all the Patreon members, it's your support that really means the world. All of these combined have meant that I've shifted into becoming a full-time creator, which is wild. And if you want to take that jump into becoming a Patreon member, there's some awesome perks like custom painted miniatures. And links for that are in the description. With the OG Synthwave Dante, all the crests and cloth were quite bright, but this time around I wanted to go for something a little darker. For the crests, I'm shooting for a greenish turquoise color, but not quite as in your face, and I wanted to keep with the non-metallic metal feel. Starting with Angel Green as a base over the black, each layer of highlight is made by mixing in some more Turquoise Siren. And a lot of the focus for the lighter tones are being pushed towards the end of the wings. The cloth and the seals, let's be honest, they're ribbons, he just wanted to feel pretty, are all painted in the same way. If you wanted to add a little more saturation, instead of building up using the turquoise, you could also use teal. For anyone that's caught one of the Twitch streams, you'll know when adding accents, I like to work in triangles. The axe, halo, and flamer are perfect for this. They're three prominent details, and they're spaced out pretty well. On the OG Dante, these were magenta, orange, and yellow for those classic 80s Miami vibes. Since this version is a darker take, we're going to shoot for a molten metal lava feel. A white base gives our yellow the best chance of being its most vibrant. 90% of these details is going to be using stippling, which is just little dots and swipes to build up inconsistent layers. That inconsistency is what's going to sell this effect and make it look like white hot metal. This also isn't something that you can just paint by layers and be finished. You'll have to jump back and forth between the reds, yellows, oranges, and even blacks, especially to blend the detail where the body of the axe tilts towards the blade itself. And now it's time for the big reveal. I'm going to be honest, this was an absolute stretch of my abilities. While I've had my head down and really working hard on trying to become a better miniature painter, I haven't really looked up and noticed the improvements, and I think a lot of us are like that. Some advice for you, and something that I should be taking on board as well, is to look up and celebrate those little victories. We might even come back next year and check in on the progress. Until then, big love. Warlord Titan! And make sure you find time in your day to slay the grey. Subscribe or die! Whoop, wait, nope. Subscribe or die! Oh god. Of all people, how did I become a YouTube guy?